time who you represent and your position on the bill.
Sure, Vice Chair Guerrero. My name is Jeremy Wattenbarger, and I represent Betty Wattenbarger, deceased. So,
And your position on the bill.
my position on the bill is against.
Represents himself.
Yeah, you
Represent myself.
registered as representing yourself.
That's correct.
Well, he's gonna are you representing yourself?
Yes, I am. That is correct, Vice Chair.
And, all right, thank you very much.
And only yourself.
And,
And only myself. That's correct.
thank you. Very good.
All right. Thank you. Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman, I appreciate your time allowing me to testify. No, this is not one of these statements where someone gets up here and says, my child died and APNs are all horrible and bad. My child did die. She died in 2019, horribly, January 31st, 2019 at 10:09. I had to call her death in an ER. 15 hours prior to that, she was in a pediatric urgent care where she saw an APN. That APN was practicing by herself on the site, and her doctor that was delegated his licensure to her, prescriptive authority to her, was in Cambodia at the time. That is acceptable under Chapter 157. After this happened and we found out that she had been misdiagnosed, the nurse was grossly negligent in what she did. She didn't just miss that Betty had sepsis, Betty had pneumonia. She missed those two things, but she also violated standards of care. She didn't take the respiratory rate of my child. She didn't go through the proper vitals and look at the vitals and review the vitals. She didn't even chart the vitals until 9 o'clock at night, well after we left, probably about 6 hours after we left. And I said, man, this doesn't sound right at all. And this is the reason why I'm talking to you today, representatives and members of the committee here, is that this wasn't right what happened, because we had an APN who was on a site and there was nobody. She didn't pick up a phone, she didn't call. And just like what Representative Price was talking about, where they start becoming isolated or they don't feel they can reach out or whatever, she started acting outside her scope. She thought that it was okay to see this child. Had a third of a cup of pneumonia, or a third of a cup of fluid in her lungs. She was 38 pounds, this child was. She was autistic and nonverbal. And she was in a pediatric urgent care setting, which had an x-ray machine, had the capabilities to do labs and everything else. And the lady told us, the nurse told us, simply one thing. She had type A flu, she'll be fine. Her lungs sound clear, send her home. Totally misdiagnosed. So we started investigating. I work as a digital forensics investigator. That's what I do. So I started digging into this because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Why did this happen? And who should be held accountable for this? So I call the Health and Human Services here in the state of Texas. And they tell me that this pediatric urgent care that we went to is not a licensed medical facility in the state of Texas. Did not know that. There is urgent care facilities in the state of Texas that are not licensed as medical facilities, and the state doesn't have oversight over those facilities. Those facilities operate as LLCs. So what you're talking about is that when you remove the delegation from the nurses, then you're going to allow them to also start to practice at more of these urgent cares and set these urgent cares up, which we already have them now, but they're going to continue to expand that. And as they continue to expand those urgent cares and they continue to grow it, and we're seeing it I live out in Aubrey, Texas, middle of nowhere, but there is a lot of subdivisions going up and everything. Every single one of them has an urgent care in the front. And every single one of them pretty much has the same type of structure. You have a doctor who's anywhere near. They've brought APNs in. The facilities are not licensed as medical facilities. And at the end of the day, who's accountable for that facility? There ain't nobody accountable, I can tell you that. Because I called the Board of Nursing. It took a State Senator Fallon's office in 2019, had to make a call to the nursing board to even get a complaint through. So you're telling me there's accountability with the nursing board? No, there ain't no freaking accountability with the nursing board. Reality is the nursing board don't give a flip. I'll be honest with you. I've had to fight over and over and over with the nursing board, challenging them, pushing them. I even called Scott Kibbe in the governor's office and got him involved. And Scott Kibbe managed to get the investigation reopened because here's what they found the nurse guilty of: improper charting. That's what they told us. Improper charting. That was it. Improper charting. And gave her remedial education. And my question to them was, well, did you not consider that the child died? Well, no, they didn't really consider that, and they didn't really think about that, and they didn't really look at the evidence that was presented to them. So, after pushing and fighting and going back and forth with the nursing board, I managed to get it reopened. 2 years it's taken me. I have a CSI investigator at the nursing board. Now looking at the nurse's testimony, now looking at her deposition, because we did sue him, and it took me 7 attorneys to find one that would sue him, because in the state of Texas, we have Chapter 74, which limits your medical liabilities. And guess what? When your medical liability caps are limited, especially when they have my daughter, which is a non-economic loss to most people, well, she's not a non-economic loss, I'll tell you that. It's affected our family. But she's sitting here and she's dead, okay? And we have a nurse who now owns 59% of an urgent care in Denton, Texas, running it. She got rid of the doctor who delegated it to her. He wasn't doing anything anyway, really. He should have been. He should have been involved in that patient care. He should have been available to pick up a phone and call. He should have been part of that team, and he was not. And when you start removing structures, because I was in the military, and I'll tell you right now, when you start removing people out of the chain of command, and you start removing people out of different positions, and you start shuffling people around, you screw things up. Bad things happen. They do. And I understand that everyone wants to have freedom. I get that. And I totally understand that. But we have to have a proper chain of command when we're talking about nursing and we're talking about doctors. There is a appropriate chain of command. At the end of the day, there has to be. Because you know what? There's nothing that's going to happen if you allow a delegate to be removed off a nursing license. You have the nurse standing there. She is simply operating now in the medical field all by herself, and nobody is holding her accountable. So is that really the direction that we want to go here in the state of Texas? I don't think so. At the end of the day, the Board of Nursing does not run a tight ship. They were supposed to be running a tight ship. You know what they told me on the phone when I asked them about the investigation? I'll tell you what they told me. They sit there and they told me in the investigation, they didn't have the resources to continue the investigation. They had to settle it. And I'm not the only one who's been told that. They don't have the resources. So you're going to remove the delegation requirement from them, allow them to practice in medicine, and then you're going to tell me that the Board of Nursing is going to do something if they screw up? Because I sure in the hell can't sue them most of the time. So we have to start looking at our healthcare in the state of Texas and start understanding that we need to start doing laws that are more for transparency and accountability and less about rolling back restrictions. We keep rolling things back over and over and over. At the end of the day, the patient gets hurt. That's the truth. And I know that may be hard to swallow because we all have agendas at some point. But the truth is that you cannot simply say, well, we're just going to remove the delegation. Go to it. You need to look at things like accountability. You need to look at things that who is actually going to be taking care of these nurses if you want to remove the restrictions from them. What at the end of the day are they going to do when they screw up in a pediatric urgent care like with my daughter? Not only did my daughter die, but guess what? My daughter was brought to me chopped up like a piece of meat and stuck on a plate and sent to the funeral home because they had to do an autopsy. You ever seen an autopsy on a 35-pound kid? It's ugly. I'll tell you, it's anti-pretty. And it's no joke. This stuff does happen. It's not just my child. There's other people I've talked to. There's other parents I've talked to, had similar types of stories. And yes, doctors do screw up. But you know what? I would rather have a doctor screw up and know that that doctor was at least educated enough to make a decision that was actually going to be something we could hold them accountable for. At the end of the day, I can't hold the nurse accountable. I can't. I can't do anything with a nurse. But I'm told it's okay. I'm told it's all right. I'm told that nothing else is going to happen. But you know what? I ain't going to let it happen. I'm going to keep pushing. I don't care if it takes me 4 years. I don't care if it takes me 6 years. That nurse is going to be held accountable at some point. She will be. And she needs to be. You cannot misdiagnose a child, send her home, and 15 hours later she dies in my arms, hemorrhaging out of her mouth with blood. You can't do that. I don't care what profession you're in. If you screw up and you kill somebody, you're held accountable for it, but not in nursing, because the Board of Nursing can't act. I yield the floor. I have nothing else to say at this time.
Members, anybody have any questions? Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
God bless you.